Hello and welcome back to our continuation of our Exodus Bible study. And today we'll be covering chapters 32, 33, and 34. So this is our second to last Bible study on Exodus. Next week will be our last week, and we'll wrap it up. So let's dive right in and begin reading chapter 32. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered around Aaron and said to him, "Come, make gods for us, who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." Aaron said to them, "Take off the gold rings that are on the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me." So all the prophets took all the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron. He took the gold from them, formed it in a mold, and cast an image of a calf. And they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made a proclamation and said, "Tomorrow shall be a festival of the Lord." They rose early the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought sacrifices of well-being, and the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to revel. So we now enter the story of the golden calf, where the people have not only gotten impatient, but they believe that something has happened to Moses. And this can be seen to where maybe the people are intimidated by God, and perhaps they think Moses messed up or something and something happened to him, or in whatever case, they pressure Aaron to forge a god, forge these idols. And so there's no hesitation, there's no rebuke, there's no argument. Aaron just does it. So this is a pretty baffling but alarming refutation of what they just did, because they have already vowed to follow the commandments of God, to be a part of the covenant. That Israel and God are in a covenant together. And you remember that God spoke and said all these things and said them to Moses, and the people overheard, that they were thankful for Moses, they understood, they agreed, and here they are doing the exact opposite, and sharing a lie, because they know who rescued them out of the land of Egypt. And it's such a strange way in which they have twisted this truth. So we see here that this is really complicated a lot of things, and this is going to bring everything kind of to a full-blown stop as they deal with these issues. Let's catch up and continue to read. Verse 7, "The Lord said to Moses, 'Go down at once. Your people whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt have acted perversely. They have been quick to turn aside from the way that I commanded them. They have cast for themselves an image of a calf and have worshipped it and sacrificed to it and said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." The Lord said to Moses, "I have seen this people, how stiff-necked they are. Now let me alone, so that my wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them, and of you I will make a great nation." But Moses implored the Lord his God and said, "O Lord, why does your wrath burn hot against your people, whom you brought out of the land of Egypt with great power and with a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say it was with evil intent that he brought them out to kill them in the mountains and consume them from the face of the earth? Turn from your fierce wrath, change your mind, and do not bring disaster on your people. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, how you swore to them by your own self, saying to them, I will multiply your descendants like the stars of heaven, and all this land that I have promised I will give to your descendants, and they shall inherit it forever. And the Lord changed his mind about the disaster that he planned to bring on his people. So we catch up with Moses and the Lord back on the top of the mountain at the moment in which Israel begins to do this disobedience and this blasphemous act. And God is angry. God is very, very upset, and rightfully so, in the breaking of the covenant. And God declares that he will destroy them in his wrath and will begin a new and great nation from Moses. Now, notice the magnitude of this moment. Yes, the Israelites have violated the commandments of God, but God is so angry that he is wanting to start all over. It's revealed that there's this remarkable exchange between Moses and Yahweh. Basically, Moses begs God not to destroy all of Israel, implores God to change God's mind, and basically shares two main arguments. The first basically says, what will Egypt say? So this is a fascinating thing Moses is saying to God first. Remember that one of the reasons God sent the plagues and rescued the Israelites was also to spread God's name throughout Egypt and thereby the rest of the world. It was also as a way in which God's name would ripple out and be known by the world. So what would Egypt say if they heard that God, after all he had done to rescue the Israelites, simply destroyed them in the mountains? It would be a strange rumor that would spread, and the image of God would be confusing to people, perhaps. And then secondly, the argument Moses shares is to remember your covenant to Abraham, and that you promised to make his descendants as numerous to the stars. And so we hear the result of Moses' pleas and arguments that Yahweh relents. But what I want to bring up for just a moment is thinking about kind of God starting over with Moses. So essentially, God is kind of thinking at this moment of selecting Moses as almost his new Abraham. Where Abraham was the father of all the nations, he promised the descendants to him. And now God is saying, I will promise you, make a great nation out of you. And so this is an interesting parallel between those two, yet these events are conflicting a previous covenant shared to Abraham. And so what we find out at the end is that Yahweh relents, does not bring back disaster, and decides to change his mind. God changes God's mind. So that's a massive example of an interaction that Moses has with God, this intimate and the ability for Moses to share these words to God is pretty powerful and meaningful, and shows you how much respect God must have for Moses to be able to allow him to speak in this way and basically kind of correct or challenge or bring a question and begging to change. And some of us may have a struggle with we imagine God knowing everything. And so if God knows everything, why would God need to change God's mind? And so we have different experiences in the Bible that demonstrate God changing God's mind. And one of the things that we can think about in this way that is a part of our daily life is prayer. One of the main aspects of prayer is praying to God to change our circumstances, or praying to God to heal someone, praying for God to correct something that's happened over here and bring a different outcome to that situation. So prayer life is basically asking God to consider intervening, changing the course, determining a healing thing for this situation. And so here we see Moses has pleaded and has gotten a word from God that God will changes God's mind. So let's continue in our verses, starting with verse 15. Then Moses turned and went down from the mountain, carrying the 2 tablets of the covenant in his hands, tablets that were written on both sides, written on the front and on the back. The tablets were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God, engraved upon the tablets. When Joshua heard the noise of the people, as they shouted, he said to Moses, "There is a noise of war in the camp." But he said, "It is not the sound made by victors, but the sound made by losers. It is the sound of revelers that I hear." As soon as he came near the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, Moses' anger burned hot, and he threw the tablets from his hands and broke them at the foot of the mountain. He took the calf that they had made, burned it with fire, ground it to powder, scattered it on the water, and made the Israelites drink it. Moses said to Aaron, "What did this people do to you that you have brought so great a sin upon them?" And Aaron said, "Do not let the anger of my Lord burn hot. You know the people, they are bent on evil. They said to me, 'Make us gods, you shall go before us.' As for this Moses, the man who brought us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." So I said to them, 'Whoever has gold, take it off.' So they gave it to me, and I threw it into the fire, and out came this calf. When Moses saw that the people were running wild, and Aaron had let them run wild to the derision of their enemies, then Moses stood at the gate of the camp and said, "Who is on the Lord's side? Come to me." And all the sons of Levi gathered around him. He said to them, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, put your sword on your side, each of you. Go back and forth from gate to gate throughout the camp, and each of you kill your brother, your friend, and your neighbor." The sons of Levi did as Moses commanded, and about 3,000 of the people fell on that day. Moses said, "Today you have ordained yourself for the service of the Lord, each one at the cost of a son or a brother, and so brought a blessing on yourselves this day." On the next day, Moses said to the people, "You have sinned a great sin, but now I will go up to the Lord. Perhaps I can make atonement for your sin." So Moses returned to the Lord and said, "Alas, this people has sinned a great sin. They have made for themselves gods of gold. But now if you will only forgive their sin, but if not, blot me out of the book that you have written." But the Lord said to Moses, "Whoever sinned against me I will blot out of my book. But now go, lead the people to the place about which I have spoken to you. See, my angel shall go in front of you. Nevertheless, when the day comes for punishment, I will punish them for their sin." Then the Lord sent a plague on the people because they made the calf, and one that Aaron made. So we see that Moses arrives back down on the mountain, and Joshua is here again, and noticeably Joshua has been separated from the events down on the ground. If you remember, there are basically 3 areas over the last few chapters. There's the top of the mountain, where God most visibly has been present. There's the foot of the mountain, where sometimes the cloud of God has dwelt, but there are other ways in which elders and others have been on that portion. And then there's down in the camp. So 3 different locations. And so we see that Joshua is on the foot of the mountain, separated. And we see that Moses' anger burns hot, and this is similar language to what we just heard Yahweh share. So there's a similar anger of wrath from both as they realize, God realized instantly what happened. And as Moses takes on what he saw, then his anger burns hot. And Moses smashes the stone tablets and destroys the golden calf. And very humorously makes the Israelites drink it, right? Moses then challenged Aaron to what they did to convince him to do such a great sin. And Aaron replies with some kind of repentance, but recounts the events in a strange way. He doesn't really fess up that he's the one that created the calf, but that it just appeared after he gave the gold. So Moses then declares to the people, those that are on the Lord's side should come to him. And it says that the sons of Levi came. And here we have to understand that there are different tribes of Israel that will be going forward. And so here we see that, the sons of Levi are recruited and they come to Moses' side and they slay 3,000 people. Now, we know that that's not near the total number of Israelites. And we've seen different figures of a few 100,000 or so that were supposedly traveling. And but what we do seem to understand is that those were the number of people that were sacrificed kind of in this way as an atonement. And this can be a strange passage for us to read. One, in the sense of trying to understand how many people there are, who is doing the killing, how many are killed, how many are left, and also this task that Moses gives to go and slay brother and friend. It seems very harsh to us. If you look at it from the position of Moses, he knows that the people have broken the covenant. And that's why he smashed it. Why he smashed the stone tablets, because the covenant was effectively broken because they totally didn't obey, didn't follow the commands. And so there's kind of chaos at this particular moment, and Moses' solution is to basically kind of bring vengeance upon those that created this situation. All they have worked towards to bring to this moment has kind of been shattered. And also, perhaps there's somewhere in Moses that believes that if there's some kind of retribution that's given, perhaps God will continue to work with them. But we also see the Levites were ordained. And we also see that Moses goes back to Yahweh to plead for atonement for the people. And God declares he will blot out all who disobeyed. So what seems to have taken place, which is unclear in the text, is not all Israelites were a part of what happened with the golden calf. Some people will argue that maybe there were pro-Aaron people and there were pro-Moses people, and maybe there was a certain number of folks that really saw Aaron as the leader, and when they got the chance to pressure him to make the golden calf, that's what happened, and it's those people that God brings the plague upon, because clearly God didn't bring the plague upon all of Israel, because Israel goes forward into Canaan. So there's a little bit of unclear narrative there about how many are killed and who is killed. But one of the things that this basically is sharing to us is that there was a punishment for this, and yet God will continue to work. However, there is a significant verse here, also in these last few verses of chapter 32. We see this section where there's this commission for Moses to go to the land of Canaan, and an angel will go in front of you. So essentially what's happening is that God is kind of deciding that he's going to hang out on this mountain, or at the very least, he's not really going to go and travel in the way that he did before. He's going to send an angel on his behalf to do that. And this is kind of the answer that he's giving to how the Israelites did the golden calf. You'll notice that the covenant has not been reestablished yet, and so it's still broken. And so it's almost like God is going to go ahead and go through with this plan of bringing them into the land of Canaan, but he personally, his physical presence is not going to be there. An angel representing him will be there, if that makes sense. Let's continue as we read chapter 33. The Lord said to Moses, "Go leave this place, you and the people whom you have brought up out of the land of Egypt, and go to the land of which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, to your descendants I will give it. I will send an angel before you, and I will drive out the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, Hivites, and the Jebusites. Go up to a land flowing with milk and honey, and I will not go up among you, or I would consume you on the way, for you are a stiff-necked people." When the people heard these harsh words, they mourned, and no one put on ornaments. For the Lord had said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, you are a stiff-necked people. If for a single moment I should go up among you, I would consume you. So now take off your ornaments, and I will decide what to do to you." Therefore the Israelites stripped themselves of their ornaments from Mount Horeb onward. So God has Moses and the people leave. They will be going to the land of Canaan, but God will not go in and among them, because God's anger will rekindle over what previously occurred. So the tension is still looming, and the significance of these ornaments is it could be additional gold. So perhaps God doesn't want them to melt that down and do what they just did. And the other thing is that those ornaments, in a way, marked them as Israelites. So as they travel through the wilderness to the land of Canaan, they're going to be unidentified. And they're going to basically be this band of travelers, instead of known as the people who serve Yahweh. Let's continue. Verse 7. Now Moses used to take the tent and pitch it outside the camp. Far off the camp, he called it the tent of meeting. And everyone who sought the Lord would go out to the tent of meeting, which was outside the camp. Whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people would rise and stand, each of them at the entrance of their tents, and watch Moses until he had gone into the tent. When Moses entered the tent, the pillar of cloud would descend and stand at the entrance of the tent, and the Lord would speak with Moses. When all the people saw the pillar of cloud standing at the entrance of the tent, all the people would rise and bow down, all of them, at the entrance of their tent. Thus the Lord used to speak to Moses face to face, as one speaks to a friend. Then he would return to the camp, but his young assistant, Joshua, son of Nun, would not leave the tent. So I will say the previous section we just read and this section are a strange placement. And they're a strange placement because we're going to find out that the next few verses that we're in a different place. Especially with this tent of meeting, we see verses describing a regular occurring event with Moses in the tent of meeting. This is not to be confused with the tabernacle. God's presence does focus in on this tent outside the camp, and this legitimizes Moses' leadership. We also see Joshua in that tent as well, so it's legitimizing him as Moses' successor. But the placement here is odd. It's almost as if this should be occurring after the events of when they leave Mount Sinai, because The next few chapters, as we wrap up the book of Exodus, don't get us very far. There's not much more content and narrative left. And so it seems as though the writer placed this here as a hint of kind of how things work after they leave Mount Sinai and creating this tent of meaning. So that because here we are, as we start in verse 12, we're back with the Lord and Moses on Mount Sinai. So the placement of time there is off. Let's continue. Verse 12. Moses said to the Lord, "See, you have said to me, bring up this people, but you have not let me know whom you will send with me. Yet you have said, I know you by name, and you have also found favor in my sight. Now if I have found favor in your sight, show me your ways, so that I may know you and find favor in your sight. Consider too that this nation is your people." He said, "My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest." And he said to him, if your presence will not go, do not carry us up from here. For how shall it be known that I have found favor in your sight, I and your people, unless you go with us? In this way we shall be distinct, I and your people, from every people on the face of the earth. The Lord said to Moses, "I will do the very thing that you have asked, for you have found favor in my sight, and I know you by name." Moses said, "Show me your glory, I pray." And he said, "I will make all my goodness pass before you, and will proclaim before you the name, the Lord. And I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and will show mercy on whom I will show mercy. But," he said, "you cannot see my face, for no one shall see me and live." And the Lord continued, "See, there is a place by me where you shall stand on the rock. And while my glory passes by, I will put you in a cleft of the rock. And I will cover you with my hand until I have passed by. And then I will take away my hand, and you shall see my back, but my face shall not be seen." So, remember previously that Yahweh said an angel would guide them, basically sharing that I'm not going to travel in and among you, and also that tent of meeting episode. All of that seems to skip where we previously were, and so here we are with this conversation with Yahweh and Moses again. So Moses wants Yahweh to lead them to the land of Canaan. Moses wants to know God. It is a strange selection of verses that seem to portray Moses giving God kind of a pep talk to fully commit again to the covenant and truly have Israel and Yahweh united. Without Yahweh's full presence with Israel, it would seem as though they're traveling alone. We've shared that before. So Moses wants to find favor with God, and it is shared by God that he knows Moses' name, an intimate way of establishing an understanding of the other. Moses then wants to see God's glory. Yahweh takes the consideration seriously about seeing face to face, but won't fully grant it. However, Yahweh is connecting to Moses in a big way by his proclamations, and also not just in letting Moses see his face, but to see Yahweh's back. This is significant because if you remember, the only glimpse of God that people have seen at this point have either been in the form of angels, or if you remember, the feet of God standing on the pavement on top of Mount Sinai. So seeing God's back is a significant gift given by God to Moses. All this does is cements the connection between God and Yahweh, between God and Moses, as this strong connection. It speaks to why Moses is so respected and regarded and lifted up in the book of the Old Testament. So let us continue by reading chapter 34. The Lord said to Moses, "Cut 2 tablets of stone like the former ones, and I will write on the tablets the words that were on the former tablets which you broke. Be ready in the morning and come up in the morning to Mount Sinai, and present yourself there to me on the top of the mountain. No one shall come up with you, and do not let anyone be seen throughout all the mountain. And do not let flocks or herds graze in front of the mountain." So Moses cut 2 tablets of stone like the former ones, and he rose early in the morning, went up on Mount Sinai as the Lord had commanded him, and took in his hand the 2 tablets of stone. The Lord descended in the cloud and stood with him there, and proclaimed the name, the Lord. The Lord passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for the 1,000th generation, forgiving any iniquity and transgression and sin, yet by no means clearing the guilty, but visiting the iniquity of the parents upon the children and the children's children to the 3rd and 4th generation. And Moses quickly bowed his head toward the earth and worshipped. He said, "If now I have found favor in your sight, O Lord, I pray let the Lord go with us. Although this is a stiff-necked people, pardon our iniquity and our sin, and take us our inheritance." So here we have the commandments established again. The covenant has been reunited. And the covenant is reunited. Why? Because Moses was determined to keep this covenant strong. Moses pleaded to God, and God agreed. So God has now essentially forgiven fully what transpired, because this covenant is established again. And the next verses 10 through 28 share commands that we've heard before, different laws that are also shared, and ends with this statement: "He was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. He neither ate bread nor drank water, and he wrote on the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments." So basically, Moses is up there the same time period that he was before, when the covenant was previously established, and these are being placed. And so everything is being legitimized again and official. And let's read this final section, 29 through 35. Moses came down from Mount Sinai. As he came down from the mountain with the 2 tablets of the covenant in his hand, Moses did not know that the skin of his face shone, because he had been talking with God. When Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses, the skin of his face was shining, and they were afraid to come near him. But Moses called to them, and Aaron and all the leaders of the congregation returned to him, and Moses spoke with them. Afterward, all the Israelites came near, and he gave them in commandment all that the Lord had spoken with them on Mount Sinai. When Moses had finished speaking with them, he put a veil on his face. But whenever Moses went in before the Lord to speak with him, he would take the veil off until he came out. And when he came out and told the Israelites what he had been commanded, the Israelites would see the face of Moses, that the skin of his face was shining, and Moses would put the veil on his face again until he went in to speak with him. An incredible image of Moses' time spent with God, literally changing him. And essentially, this is basically Moses being so exposed to the glory of God that his face shines. And what it also will do is that it will be a symbol to the Israelites, as long as Moses is with them until his death, of a symbol of that covenant, of a symbol of the glory of God going with them. So it's a powerful reminder to everyone there that sees the face of Moses when the veil is lifted of all that God has done. And it's just a great image to end on today. I hope that this was helpful and informative, and I hope you enjoyed this study. And we'll wrap up our Bible study in Exodus next week. Let us pray. Gracious God, we give you thanks for the blessing of this day. And we seek to do your will and to obey, to love and to serve. We give thanks for this gift of life, this gift of being in covenant with you. Amen. May you have a blessed day. Thank you.